International Trade Focus is brought to you by Ghana Free Zones Authority and supported by GOIL and Agricultural Development Bank.
Coming up on International Trade Focus, we shall take a look at the state of the tourism and creative arts industry in Ghana in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. And later, the pharmaceutical industry calls for investment into the sector to begin manufacturing raw materials for the West African markets. The tourism and creative arts industries are among industries that have been worst hit by the COVID-19 pandemic globally. Here in Ghana, our tourism and creative arts industry was tipped to be one of the fastest growing industries in 2020 following the success of the year of return. However, it seems as though the high hopes we had about the prospects of our tourism industry is fast fading away as the industry has been hit badly by the COVID-19 pandemic. So how bad is this situation, and is there any light at the end of the tunnel? That's what we'll be looking at in this week's edition of International Trade Focus. Before we proceed, we'd like to say special thanks to the sponsors of this program. International Trade Focus is brought to you by Ghana Free Zones Authority. They say sharing good fortunes, and GOIL, good energy, ADB, truly agric and more. International Trade Focus is also supported by Pediasip Valley Resort. My name is Anna Spio. Stay tuned.
Your business concepts and investment must be harnessed through a hassle-free and highly thoughtful process to make them globally competitive. That is precisely the mission of the Ghana Free Zones Authority. Ghana Free Zones Authority packages Ghana's enabling business and investment environment with endless benefits. Total exemption from major taxes and levies for first 10 years. Talk to us now about our business oasis created all over the country, acres of industrial enclaves for all sectors. Our beneficiaries are in vibrant business, exporting finished and processed factory inputs all over the world. And what do our clients call us?
Partner.
Ghana Free Zones Authority, sharing good fortunes.
Breathtaking picturesque views, the essence of tranquility recrafted. What's your desire? A romantic expedition, syndicate sessions, banquet and conferences, or a discreet weekend getaway? Just name it. It is exclusively packaged for you at Pediasip Valley Resort. Every spacious rooms, ultra-modern gym facilities, games, indoors, terrace and lawn restaurants and lounges, cozy private dining, and all the swimmer's paradise. Aquaba, any day, all year round to Pediasip Valley Resort. The acts of serenity, skillfully served.
Here's innovation from GOIL that takes you further. New GOIL Super Synthetic 5W20 and 5W30 lubes have been expertly crafted with the latest in liquid engineering technology, highly advanced for modern engines, prolongs oil change intervals, save you fuel, clean, protect and enhance engine performance. The way engines work has become complex, and GOIL has innovated to stay ahead with expertly crafted lubricants that work excellently with all petrol and diesel engines of today. New GOIL Super Synthetic 5W20 and 5W30 lubes. Innovation that takes you further. GOIL. Good energy.
Are you an importer or exporter? Do you need quick financing at the best rate on the market? ADB has good news for you. Walk into any agricultural development bank location nationwide for that solution to all your trade financing needs. ADB offers you pre-financing of exports and imports, post-shipment credit facilities, bank guarantees, the issuance and acceptance of letters of credit, documentary bills for collection, outward documentary collection. Enjoy free advisory services from our well-trained, dedicated trade officers. Exporters of agricultural products are encouraged to take advantage of this great service. For further enquiries, call us on 0302 210 210. ADB, making trade finance easy. ADB, truly agric and more.
You're still watching International Trade Focus. Stay tuned for our focal point segment. Following the huge success of the Year of Return, Ghana's tourism and creative arts industry was tipped to be one of the fastest growing sectors in the year 2020. However, it appears the high hopes we had about the prospects of the tourism industry is fast fading away as the industry has already been hit badly by the COVID-19 pandemic. News gathered from the authorities in charge of tourism and hospitality on the hospitality industry in Ghana indicate that a lot of them have already stopped operations and those that are still in business are operating under 20% capacity. Certainly, this will come with a lot of job losses to the thousands of employees who earn their daily wages from the industry. Considering the fact that the industry is private sector led and their chances of staying in business depends purely on revenue inflow, it will not be far-fetched to assume that their redundant workers will be laid off once the facility loses so much business. Another ripple effect of the close down of business in the tourism sector is the losses that suppliers will suffer. Items such as fresh food, toiletries and other consumables will no longer be in high demand. Last week, there were complaints from the Greater Accra Poultry Farmers Association that the demand for fresh chicken and eggs had dropped significantly because the hotels and restaurants that used to buy them are no longer in operations. This has been confirmed by a number of restaurant operators International Trade Focus spoke to. According to them, patronage of foods from restaurants has dropped to an all-time low and they were operating at less than 20% capacity. Audrey Salome is the manager of Buka Restaurant located at Osu in Accra.
Majority of our guests are walk-in, dine-in customers. Obviously, following COVID-19, we've had to shut down the dine-in aspect of it, and we're already running a takeaway service. Now, our takeaway service, which is quite a brisk part of our business as well, is mostly geared towards companies. So we are doing some form of takeaway service to the staff. You know, people are running on very slim, staff bodies. We're running on the skeletal staff bodies, I should say, skeletal staff bodies, and we're providing meals for those who come to us and request for the service. Now, I have quite a large staff body. I'm operating on less than 20% of my staff body because, but as I mentioned to you earlier, majority of my business is dine-in, and I'm really running a takeaway service. I don't need my entire staff body to be here to just run that small aspect of the business. So I think we're probably maybe 8 or 9 people here. I come in daily, which is a great shame, but there's nothing anybody can do about it. There was some people came together, some stakeholders of the industry came together, and they have formed something they call the National Hospitality Association of Ghana, and they've sent a petition to government, and the petition basically is asking for some sort of concessions for the industry to allow us at least give some percentage of the salaries for those who are sitting at home and not working. What we want is for us some sort of concessions on our tax rates. We're not asking for monies because we know that, look, economies are tight. So we're not asking that they should come out with bailouts for our association. I believe what we're trying to ask for is certain concessions to be made towards some of the statutory payments we make, like our VATs, our tourism levies, etc., so that we can actually use those monies those savings that we will make inevitably towards paying our salary workers.
Similar sentiments have been expressed by a number of hoteliers who were hoping that the remarkable success that was recorded under the Year of Return initiative last year was going to propel them to greater heights in the year 2020. However, it seems all hope is almost lost, according to Benjamin Afunya, the Greater Accra Regional Chairman of Hotels Association.
We had so much expectation because of beyond the year of return. We did a year of return, and the government brought the year of return. So we're preparing ourselves for the year of return. We're preparing ourselves beyond the year of return. So as we're preparing ourselves for it, Corona setting, there were lot of massive cancellation of conferences in the country. Hotel is not just only accommodation. We have conferences, we have restaurants and other things. So there was serious cancellation. So as we entered the latter part of February, we almost 90% of reservations were cancelled, both international and local. And as we entered February, in fact, the conferences were cancelling. And then also those that were coming in there was that serious cancellation. And then the president's announcement, that also brought massive cancellation. And definitely when this thing happens, what are the effects? We are looking at job losses, revenue losses. In fact, we'll start with job losses. In fact, let me see, right now, as we are talking right now, almost all the casual workers at home that we had, and in every establishment, we had about 20% of the casual workers as your workforce. They are home, and then as we are talking right now, 80% of your permanent staff to 80 to 90% of permanent staff to are home. And then we are not looking at that. We are looking at the indirect. We have suppliers that were supplying us, products in terms of vegetables and other things. We are also badly affected because when we are in business, they are in business. So definitely it affected them also. So they too, it affected them. So as we enter into month of March, what happened was that the cancellation started. We were able to take care of our workers in the month of March, pay them. In fact, every institution or as the industry, we do projection. We did our projection and realized that, hey, we'll be able to do our 60%. But when we enter into month of April, we'll do 2 to 12% in a month. That is occupancy. And if I'm talking of occupancy, these are walk-ins. You understand? Most hotels do not depend on walk-ins. The 3-5-star hotels do not depend on walk-ins and other things. Some do reservations and other things. So in a nutshell, all I would say is that this month we are doing 2 to 12, 5, 15%, depending on the week. And now, when we look at those in the regions, I've talked about Greater Accra. One of those are colleagues in the rural areas. They were depending on funerals, activities like festivals, activities like outdoors and other things for their as their intake during the weekends. Now, because of there was that cancellation on cancellation of meeting and other things, these people are basically not getting anything. So I would say with them, this month and even middle part of March is 0%, and even now 0%. What happens now? Do you need a worker? No, you lay all of them off. So basically, that is that. Now, there was this news that hotels can operate, but the issue is that if there are lockdowns, who will go out to do what?
Perhaps what might have been the greatest contributory factor to the deep decline in international trade worldwide is the compliance of social distancing protocols. That does not allow conferences and workshops that will attract people to book and use hotel accommodations and conference facilities. Apart from this, government agencies and private companies that used to organize seminars and workshops at these hotels have also suspended them because of the ban on public and mass gatherings. According to the International Monetary Fund, the world is going to experience its worst economic recession since the 1930s, and the impact on all businesses would certainly be too costly. As global efforts to seek medical intervention to end COVID-19 continues, the business community, including the tourism and hospitality industry, desperately wait in anxiety with the hope that very soon there would be a solution. But the big question is, when and where is the much-needed solution coming from? There's no doubt that the tourism and creative arts industry are among industries worst hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. But how bad is the situation, and will these industries be able to recover after COVID-19? Joining us on our in-depth segment today is the CEO of the Ghana Tourism Authority, Mr. Kwesi Agyeman. Stay tuned. You're watching International Trade Focus, and this is our in-depth segment. Our guest for today is the CEO of the Ghana Tourism Authority, Mr. Kwesi Agyeman. We are coming to take a look at the reality on the ground as far as the tourism and creative arts industry is concerned, the impact of the COVID-19 disease. How bad has this affected our tourism and creative industry? Thank you very much for taking time off your busy schedule to talk to us.
Thank you for coming.
Right, so I want to find out from you. I mean, from afar, we can all attest to the fact that, or we can all say that the tourism and creative arts industry happens to be one of the worst hit industries, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. But you are in a position to give us more detail. So from where you sit, what are the realities on the ground? How bad is the situation?
All right, thank you. I believe the situation is quite dire. We know tourism and the arts generally depends a lot on movement of people, people traveling in, people visiting sites, and also depends a lot on gathering. I mean, the recent phenomena is on MICE, which is meetings, incentives, conferences, and events or exhibitions. And so to the extent that COVID is preventing everybody from moving globally, the industry has been hit hard. Here in Ghana, we know most of our upmarket hotels depend on international arrivals. Either they are the crew of airlines who are staying there, or people coming in for big major conferences, or people hosting events there. All these things are gone. We know the sites and attractions have all been closed down. A lot of people are employed in the industry. We know people are home, and so eateries and restaurants and chop bars are also feeling the hit. So it's quite serious. We've been engaging since day one. We started engagement even before we got our first announcement of 2 cases, somewhere on the 12th of March. Prior to that, we had met with the industry to see how, as key stakeholders, we can work together to put in place precautionary measures against COVID-19. And so it started off well for us in terms of trying to put in place precautionary measures. But obviously, given that airport was open, people were traveling in, given that people were moving out, and it was just a matter of time, like our president said, that potentially we could be hit. And so since then, we've been looking at first the impact, second how we can put in place mitigating measures in terms of the spread, because we know that most of our regulated establishments will potentially become anchors for the spread. So if you take like the beaches, the nightclubs, if you have people go to these places in their numbers, then potentially you could be spreading the disease across. And so that's also become one of the areas of work for us. How do we work with the National Task Force to ensure that these places are kept closed, or they don't violate the public gathering measures that have been put in place? Then we've also been looking at the impact, and here we want to work based on numbers, not just we all know it's been hit, but how bad is it? What is it in figures? We've done a little bit of some assumptions based on the global trend. Globally, when this thing started, we have what we call the World, the WTTC, World Tourism and Travel Council, and they came out with some assumptions that this will hit globally about 25% of the travel industry. And so we also did an assumption locally that, okay, if this is what the global think tanks are saying, let's make that assumption. But then as we started off, we realized that, look, they may be talking 25%. We may go as far as 40%, because there's also the fact of the matter that people take time to plan travel. And so to that extent, we've made an assumption that 40% of the revenue in the industry may be gone. It's not something that we could recover. This may take another 5 months to come back on. And even when you're back on, now how do you get people interested in travel? People might be now even afraid of sitting in planes because you don't know who is sitting next to you. People might not be so keen on attending big conferences, events, because you don't know who you'll be meeting and shaking out. So there is some level of work that has to go in, and currently that is what we are doing.
Now, let's take a look at where we were just a few months ago with the Year of Return initiative, which was a huge success. And Ghana's tourism and creative arts sector was tipped to be one of the fastest growing tourism and creative arts sectors, and where we are currently. So give us a little background, the Year of Return, events that went into it, revenue that was generated, and the general success of the event. Tell us a little bit about that. And then, should this COVID-19 persist, where are we headed?
All right, okay, so we ended 2018 with around 960,000 people coming in. And so I think 956,000 international arrivals. So when we started off the Year of Return, we were looking at crossing the 1 million mark. I mean, that's the basis of saying that you've done something. And these are numbers. I mean, if you're talking about an increase in 40, 50,000 people coming into the destination, that's a lot of work. But we ended the year 2019 with about 1.130. That's 1,130,000 arrivals, which is more like about 18% growth year on year. If you put it aside what pertains globally, the same year globally, the average growth was 5%. So it shows that Ghana grew far above the global average. And so we were quite happy with what we had achieved, but we also kept our eyes on the ball. And that's how come the president had announced Beyond the Return as far back as in November when he met the press, and then in December in front of some of the visiting, returning diaspora, he officially announced Beyond the Return. Most of our plans for Beyond the Return, thankfully, centers around the middle part of the year into December, where we have another climax, December in GH. And so for now, we wouldn't say we've been hit that much when it comes to Beyond the Return. We know that all the plans, for example, we're looking at a bigger emancipation this year, going into December, where we have signed a new MOU with Afro Nation. Afrochella was also there. We have Dirty Rave, Little Havana, a lot of events happening around that time. We've also signed an agreement with the Africa Tourism Association to host the World Travel Congress here in Ghana. This was supposed to be happening in October. So these are all events that still potentially, depending on...
So it's too early to tell.
Potentially could still happen. But the numbers went up. We also saw an increase in the average number of days people were staying. Average spend per visitor was also going up. And so things were looking right. Occupancy
Is it true that people spent all their money, got broke, and they were stranded in the country?
There were a few cases like that, and it's quite interesting. People came, they liked what they saw, they didn't want to go back. And so it all added to the destination. I mean, since then we've received a lot of inquiries from people who want to come host big events here, who want to partner with us on major conferences. So I would say we're on the right path. And then COVID-19. But like I indicated, this is also an industry that, as sensitive as it is, knows how to rebound. And we have been engaging the business sector or the private sector, if I should put it that way, got off. So we have the Hotels Association, the car rentals, tour operators, restaurants, hospitality association, tour guides. We've all been engaging. Yesterday, for example, we had a meeting, a Zoom meeting online, where we all started looking at what are the measures we can immediately put in place to rebound, because they depend on how well we market Ghana for people to come in or for people to move around. And so I'm very, very positive that, given the ideas that were shared in that meeting and given the fact that everybody is keeping their eye on the ball, that we need to quickly rebound. And that for us is what is keeping us very busy, even as we are in a lockdown.
Right. So we'll take a look at some of the measures that you discussed in that meeting. But before that, within the tourism and the creative art industry itself, do you have some vulnerable sectors under these two sectors who have been even worse hit than the general impact that it has had on these sectors?
I mean, I wouldn't single out any of them, because, our industry is very interconnected. The interconnectivity is so tight that you can't. For example, airlines are not coming in. So if the airlines are not coming in, the airport is shut. Immediately you cut out occupancy for a lot of the hotels, because most of the international travelers coming in stay in hotels. So airlines are suffering, the hotels will immediately suffer. When they get to the airport, how do they get to their destinations? Their car rentals. How do they move around? Car rentals, food. Who is facilitating their visits across Ghana? The tour operators suffer. If they can't move if they're not coming in, people are not going to eat. The eateries, the restaurant, the hospitality association, and if people don't, so every sector really has been hit. I mean, when you talk about the lack of public gatherings, for example, if you extend it to the creative arts in general, musicians, performances, if there were events, if there were big events, some will be MCs, there will be singing, some will be DJing. So every aspect of it has been hit. So that is how tightly knit the industry is. But I believe we've started to look at, okay, which of them can immediately come out of the depression, if I should put it that way. So you find out that, for example, the moment we lift the ban, probably you will not get a lot of international arrivals, but you could get a lot of people traveling around. People who have not been able to visit family, there are a lot of funerals and weddings that have been put on hold. So immediately you can start seeing places like the guest houses filling up, event centers, started to get people come back in. And so then hotels, eateries will also start making some money. But the challenge we're having is not just the lost revenue, the expenditure that has to go on whilst we are on a lockdown. For example, people are still paying their staff, hotels are still paying utilities, because even if there's one person staying there, the lights have to be on, the air conditioning in the lobby has to be on. And all these things are expenditures that they will bear without necessarily getting any revenue. And so we're putting the numbers together. The little that we've done, looking at a 5 months projection, is we're losing about 170 million. That is how dollars. So that's how much industrial players are losing. If we even did a deeper dive into the informal sector, where you have somebody selling wache by the corner street and all those things, a little 100 cedis loss and all those things, it probably will be even far worse. So we won't single out, but we know that we're pulling together. We're pulling together, like we said on the call yesterday. We're all in this together. Our work doesn't end until the hotels are full, the tour operators are booking fully, the car rentals are making their money, and everybody is happy. That is what we want to do.
Let's take a look at some of the measures that you, together with other stakeholders, have in place for this period, for your members?
Okay, so there are a few things that we're looking at doing. First off, I think a lot of the hotels have been very, very supportive. So the eateries have also been very, very supportive, giving out food to their frontline staff. The Chefs Association, for example, have been cooking for some of the frontline staff. You have some of the hotels that were used as quarantine hotels, if I should put them that way, where we had those who visited or who traveled in were put so that they could go through some testing. And so those hotels are also still very busy operating. In the regions, we've also had to rely on some hotels for that. For example, in the border regions, in some of the areas, Upper West, Upper East, in the Volta region, where you still people coming in through unapproved routes, they had to be put in isolation, and so hotels became quite busy for that. Now, for looking ahead and how we get out of this, we're very, very clear in our mind that Ghana will still benefit from the year of return euphoria, because we've signed long-term agreements that we hope can be respected and then can bring people back to the country. And so a few things that we felt needed to be sorted out quickly. One was the issue of the visas. Now getting people to travel is not going to be as easy as it used to be. And so it's important that we sort out our visa regime. Already we've been working with the Ghana Immigration Service, Ministry of Interior, on an e-visa project that they have been pushing. We hope that we can quickly finalize that so that people can apply online for a visa and then they don't have to visit an embassy physically to get their visas, because that has added to the cost of the destination. If somebody is in, let's say, California and wants to come to Ghana, you either mail your application through Washington, but people don't like mailing passports. Sometimes it gets missing. So they will probably fly to DC or New York, apply, go back, wait 2 weeks, come back. So by the time you sit on the flight coming to Ghana, you probably would have spent about $500, $600 already in trying to get your visa sorted. It happens in Europe. A lot of people make that complaint to us. So we're hoping that the e-visa can come in place, and I think it's something that the industry players are also quite keen. We also want to use this to see how we promote domestic tourism quite strongly. Already, the percentage of people visiting tourist sites is about 70% local, 30%. We want to even move it higher to about 85-15, because the more we can get people visiting locally, we don't have to rely on international travelers coming in. So domestic tourism is going to be given a new lease of life as we put in place the post-COVID plans. We have a project called the See Ghana, Eat Ghana, Wear Ghana, Feel Ghana. This is the time that we are going to live that up, even as we also work on Beyond the Return. Then also we're looking at how we can make the business environment quite friendlier for the operators. They've complained over time with some of the taxes, levies, fees that they pay, and we're engaging everybody who is in that loop to see what are some of the remedial measures that can be put in place for them.
You're watching International Trade Focus, and this is our in-depth segment. Our guest for today is the CEO, Ghana Tourism Authority, Mr. Kwesi Adjumah. We are discussing with him the impact that the COVID-19 pandemic has had on Ghana's tourism and creative art industry. We'll be back shortly.
Your business concepts and investment must be harnessed through a hassle-free and highly thoughtful process to make them globally competitive. That is precisely the mission of the Ghana Free Zones Authority. Ghana Free Zones Authority packages Ghana's enabling business and investment environment with endless benefits. Total exemption from major taxes and levies for first 10 years. Talk to us now about our business oasis created all over the country. Acres of industrial enclaves for all sectors. Our beneficiaries are in vibrant business, exporting finished and processed factory inputs all over the world. And what do our clients call us?
Partner.
Ghana Free Zones Authority, sharing good fortunes.
Here's innovation from Goyle that takes you further. New Gold Super Synthetic 5W20 and 5W30 lubes have been expertly crafted with the latest in liquid engineering technology, highly advanced for modern engines, prolongs oil change intervals, save you fuel, clean, protect and enhance engine performance. The way engines work has become complex, and Goyle has innovated to stay ahead with expertly crafted lubricants that work excellently with all petrol and diesel engines of today. New Goyle Super Synthetic 5W20 and 5W30 lubes. Innovation that takes you further. Goyle. Good energy.
A warm welcome back. You're still watching International Trade Focus. We're discussing the impact that the COVID-19 pandemic has had on Ghana's creative and tourism industry with the CEO of Ghana Tourism Authority, Mr. Kwesi Agyeman. Government a few weeks ago announced the fact that they are putting together a stimulus package to sort of ease the burden on various sectors and households within the country. Before we come to that, let's take a look at the tourism industry and its contribution to Ghana's GDP. Can you give us a little bit on that?
You know, we have what we call a tourism satellite account, which unfortunately we haven't been able to fully implement in Ghana. Through the World Bank project that we are working on now, it's one of the yardsticks for us that we are working on. And so in times past, what we do is to use the default figures that we have in terms of international arrivals multiplied by the average spend as contribution to GDP. And at the last count, it was around $3.3 billion. I mean, but I feel that if we were able to do the tourism satellite account, we probably can calculate to the T every amount that comes in, because this 3.3 that I'm talking about doesn't factor in your visit to Kintampo or Kakum. You know, it gets lost in the maze. And so we're working with the Statistical Service to have a tourism satellite account that can really calculate every movement. So people will be able to tell us how much they've spent on travel, on food, visiting restaurants and all those things. So when you put everything together, you can really have a tighter figure, but that is a figure that we're working with.
Do you believe that you deserve to benefit from this stimulus package, and how will it benefit your sector?
No, our sector has been hit hard. It's probably the most hit.
It's one of the worst hit.
Yeah. But if I should just break down in our sector, we have the micro, the small, medium, and the large. The needs are not the same. So, for example, if you take the airlines, we don't have a domestic carrier. So most of the airlines are foreign airlines that fly in. So probably they may benefit from a package. Let's say if BA gets a stimulus package from the UK government, then it will trickle down to their operations in Africa. Same with the Dutch, with KLM and all that. So airlines, for example, their needs are quite different. For example, they are looking at rental spaces. Most of them are at the airport, and they are renting facilities even while they are not operating. Airplanes that are parked, that have been moved, they have to probably pay parking fees. And so that is probably a concern for them. So that is a different discussion. You have the micro level people, the bar owners, the chop bar. You know, when we said all bars should shut down, they are affected. But they probably is a one-man, two-person operation. Maybe the bar owner and the waiter. So when you're looking at what sort of support can you give to such an operation? Probably maybe help with utility, and thankfully the president has granted a utility waiver for water, so that then cushions somebody like that. Then you go to the smaller operators, maybe your tour operators, the travel guides and all that, who have smaller operations, maybe little guest houses, also not a lot of employees there, but they make a contribution. So you're probably looking at utilities and support with staff payments. But then you go into the middle to the high, medium to the large sectors of the economy, where, I mean, we have hotels that are paying like almost 1 million cedis a month in electricity bill. And if they are not operating and they have to still keep some of these equipments running, they are paying all that. And then you have staff payments. I mean, we've seen data of hotels that are paying on a monthly basis up to about $500,000 to staff. So that is a different conversation. I mean, some of them in their initial approach said they wanted support with, for example, the loans that they've contracted with banks. So there's moratorium. That's the president immediately granted that. So everybody has a 6 months moratorium on payments, principal payments due banks. And so that helps cushion. Now we get to the other side. So that is more like, okay, how do we cushion you? But that is different from now moving to how do we aggressively make sure that even when COVID is over, your hotels are full, because paying part of your utilities or waiving fees and charges will not necessarily bring people to their hotel rooms. We need to find a way that we can work together to make sure that there are heads on the pillows, and that people are filling up the airplanes and all that. And that is what we are working on with the industry. And I hope that very soon we will have completed what we call the post-COVID short-term strategy, and that will address some of these factors. But now, with the stimulus package that the government has announced, we have checked, and the hospitality sector can benefit. We all know that NBSSI is also working on something for small businesses. And so for those in the category that I announced to you, like the small, micro businesses, they may be able to apply for some of these reliefs or some of these facilities that will be made available. Then for the big players, your upmarket, 5-star, that's a different conversation that we're having. And so far, I think we've seen signs. I mean, the Minister of Finance himself was in Parliament last week, and he did make mention of some of the big hotels and how difficult it is for them to survive given this climate. So we're very positive that we will get to a point where everything that is worked, fiscal, monetary, every policy direction that comes will benefit the industry.
Going forward, what are some of the lessons that the tourism and creative arts industry has learned from this pandemic?
One, things are not going to be the same. I mean, we have what we call the new normal, and our new normal is quite shocking for us, because people are not going to move en masse immediately like they used to. So how do we respond to that? How do we respond to the use of technology? For example, we've had a culture of in the travel industry where there are big exhibitions, fairs, you go, you showcase the country, the destination. These fairs are not happening. For example, the biggest one that was coming was ITB Berlin. It was cancelled at the last minute. Now, these big events where you go showcase the destination, it's not going to be. You have to move now into the digital realm. Already we had started pushing out quite strongly digitally, but I think now it's digital and the others will become more like support instead of digital becoming the support. Digital is now the main focus. Ways that we can do our things, regulatory part. We had started our digital inspections somewhere in 2018. So this came at a time when we already, for example, most of our regulatory functions were being done through our digital channels. And so that part we have not been hit, but we still have to give licenses and all those things which are manual. And so you realize that how do we move really into the realm where if people are not coming, you can still derive some revenues. And also you can still put the country on the map. So virtual tourism is also another area that we are looking at, that we can keep people engaged with the destination, interact with them, even if they are in California or in SA or in China, wherever they are. They could log on, see Kakum or be in Kintampo, and then do the waterfall without necessarily coming here. I mean, we want to now use technology to reach out to our publics, and then also find ways that we can build a domestic tourism product. I mean, now you can't be relying only on your heritage sites. Ghanaians know it. They don't, it's not, I mean, a Ghanaian visiting the Cape Coast Castle is not the same as an African American visiting Cape Coast Castle. So you have to look for products that Ghanaians will love to visit. And so we're also doing an inventory assessment of all the tourist sites that we have. Which ones will appeal more to the domestic market? We know our festivals are quite strong, but now is the time to promote it even more purposefully, so that every festival is an opportunity for the whole country to congregate. Like the president did with the movement of the Independence Parade. We saw all the hotels in Ashanti region, in Kumasi, were full. Same thing. So if we promote the big festivals, the Afashe coming in Cape Coast, so that the hotels, the hospitality industry can benefit, that for us is also another area to look at. But there's work to be done.
There's work to be done. And you're ready to do that work, I believe.
Yes, we are.
We are getting to the end of our interview. And how do you find the measures and the policies that the government has put in place in tackling this COVID-19 pandemic? Think we are on the right track?
I think the president has shown great leadership. I mean, out there in the night addressing the nation, and everything is on point, to the extent that you look at some of the measures and how immediately it has more or less brought about some stability in it, because there was some fear and panic, especially when the numbers started moving on. We shut the borders. Is it pleasant? It's a pleasant thing to do? No. I mean, immediately for us in the hospitality tourism sector, it shakes you. But then tougher times calls for tougher leaderships. And then we see in him the father figure, somebody who is moving all of us along. And so yes, some of the measures may have affected businesses, may have affected people. I mean, when people talk about lockdown, I mean, there are people who, if they don't go out, they can't eat. You know, they don't have fridges, they don't have anything. They stay 5, 6 in a room. They go out, and out there is their kitchen, out there is their hall, everything. Once he gets out of that kiosk, the world out there, that's how he eats. So a lockdown is not necessarily something that is easy for us to do in this part of the world. But for the president to have been able to lock us down, but still allow certain movements, I mean, I think he's done very well. The measures have helped. We're hoping that we can get over this quite quickly, because for us, every day counts. Every week without hotels operating at full capacity, every week without the restaurants bubbling with people, every week without our sites welcoming visitors is revenue to the state that is going, revenue to operator that is going down the drain. So we would have wished that things get back to normal. But I think the president said it all, that he knows how to fix the economy. He doesn't know how to resurrect dead bodies. So we are better safe than sorry. Once it is over, and given the assurances we have with our business sector, the GATOF, the tour operators, that we are in it together, I'm very, very confident that we will be able to ride it. Our minister has also shown great leadership in terms of the data and how policy direction in terms of how we respond to the measures that the president announces. I think it's shown some teamwork within the industry at the ministry level, at the agency level, and also at the private sector level. I think we are all working to one goal: get this thing done with, get on with our lives, and make sure that the tourism sector is never the same again.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time off your busy schedule.
Yes, you can see
how is work going?
We're not sleeping because we have regional offices. Some of them are still operating; they are not in lockdown, and the requests that are coming in, sanitizers for the informal sector, gloves, masks. So we are more or less operating a skeletal team, but working double because you have to now serve the whole country. I mean, our officers in the region are also doing a fantastic job with monitoring. So you realize that some of the reports that come in, people who have been accosted in hotels, people who have been, everybody is on the alert because for us, we need to contain this. We need to contain this pandemic. We need to bring it down. We need to get on with our lives. The industry is sensitive. We know that we've been hit, but we also know that it's a resilient industry. Ebola came 2014, when there was SARS, same kind of thing, but not at the scale. But we know that we can bounce back, and we are putting on our thinking caps, working together and making sure that as soon as it's over, we are ready to punch and punch hard.
All right. Thank you once again, and stay safe.
Thank you. Stay safe yourself.
Right. If you just tuned in, you're watching International Trade Focus. That was the Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Tourism Authority, Mr. Kwesi Agyeman. We'll be back shortly.
Your business concepts and investment must be harnessed through a hassle-free and highly thoughtful process to make them globally competitive. That is precisely the mission of the Ghana Free Zones Authority. Ghana Free Zones Authority packages Ghana's enabling business and investment environment with endless benefits. Total exemption from major taxes and levies for first 10 years. Talk to us now about our business oasis created all over the country. Acres of industrial enclaves for all sectors. Our beneficiaries are in vibrant business, exporting finished and processed factory inputs all over the world. And what do our clients call us?
Partner.
Ghana Free Zones Authority, sharing good fortunes.
Breathtaking picturesque views, the essence of tranquility recrafted. What's your desire? A romantic expedition, syndicate sessions, banquet and conferences, or a discreet weekend getaway? Just name it. It is exclusively packaged for you at Peduasi Valley Resort. Every spacious rooms, ultra-modern gym facilities, games, indoors, terrace and lawn restaurants and lounges, cozy private dining, and all the swimmer's paradise. Aquaba, any day, all year round to Peduasi Valley Resort. The acts of serenity, skillfully served.
The Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Association of Ghana has reiterated calls to pay attention to pharmaceutical manufacturing in the country. In an exclusive interview with International Trade Focus, the president of the association, Mr. Kofi Nsiapoku, said the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the country's dependency on China and India for pharmaceutical ingredients. He suggested that the nation needs to consider local manufacturing of pharmaceutical raw materials for the West African markets.
Since this pandemic came, China was locked down, India banned some of the products. So we were really exposed and we didn't really have anywhere to go. So it is important that as a country, we really begin to look at or take manufacturing seriously. Because if China had not come back and India has not lifted some of the ban, Ghana was really exposed, and this pandemic could wipe everybody in Ghana because there was no way we could get material or medicine. Even if we have the capacity to produce, you need a raw material, and it was not going to be available. We were really exposed. So we have to, as a country, see and take manufacturing very seriously, both APIs and the finished formulations. It is really very important. If you want to put up a factory, pharmaceutical factory, you need a minimum of 2 years. It is not very simple. So it can be done, but normally we call it APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients. You need to produce in large quantities for you to be cost effective. So we have to look at West Africa and see whether we can supply the needs of West Africa. It may not be feasible for only Ghana, but once we try to look at West Africa, then it is okay.
He noted, however, that global restriction on the supply of pharmaceutical products from India and China was easing.
We normally source raw materials, majority of raw materials from India and China. When the situation started, China wasn't working. China has actually not banned any product, but they were not working. India restricted the export of certain products, which was going to affect Ghana because the chloroquine was one of them, hydroxychloroquine was one of them, but this ban has been lifted. So as we speak, we have ordered 500 kilos of raw material for the production of hydroxychloroquine. We are already producing azithromycin. So for supportive treatment, these are the two key products that are required, which we are doing. So it is not a problem. Now China has also opened because they have been able to manage the COVID-19. So they've started going to work. So supply of raw material from China is not going to be an issue. And hydroxychloroquine and paracetamol, which was banned by India, has also been lifted. So we don't think as at now there's any risk of not having supply.
Mr. Nsiapoku reiterated that the country was adequately equipped with drugs to prevent and manage the COVID-19 pandemic.
For the first line treatment, the key one is hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin, which we are able to deliver. We can produce. We are even trying to export to the neighboring countries. They are asking us to supply them. So we are ready. I don't think Ghana really has any problem. Once people move into the next stage where they need supportive treatment, we can deliver the products for them. There shouldn't be any issue at all.
Wash your hands frequently with soap and water or alcohol-based rub. Maintain social distancing. Avoid touching eyes, nose, and mouth. Practice respiratory hygiene. If you have a fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, seek medical care early. Stay informed. Follow advice from your healthcare provider. Symptoms of coronavirus include fever, a runny nose, cough, sore throat, possibly a headache. Should you or anyone you know begin to exhibit the symptoms of COVID-19, do not go to the hospital but call emergency number 112.
Are you an importer or exporter? Do you need quick financing at the best rate on the market? ADB has good news for you. Walk into any agricultural development bank location nationwide for that solution to all your trade financing needs. ADB offers you pre-financing of exports and imports, post-shipment credit facilities, bank guarantees, the issuance and acceptance of letters of credit, documentary bills for collection, outward documentary collection. Enjoy free advisory services from our well-trained, dedicated trade officers. Exporters of agricultural products are encouraged to take advantage of this great service. For further enquiries, call us on 0302 210 210. ADB, making trade finance easy. ADB, truly agric and more.
And it's a wrap. Today's edition of International Trade Focus. Join us same time next week for some more. Until then, remember to stay safe. International Trade Focus is brought to you by Ghana Free Zones Authority. They say sharing good fortunes and goal, good energy. ADB, truly agric and more. International Trade Focus is also supported by Pediatric Valley Resort. My name is Anas Pio. Enjoy your day.